Creatures of the Night, it's your girl Tati. Let's talk about Dark Side of the Ring Season 5, Episode 6. Welcome to my nightmare, the story of Chris Colt. Now, we start off this episode with Jim Cornette saying that Chris Colt was one of the best wrestlers that you've never seen. He was known for doing his own thing and had a weird obsession with death. Now, for this episode, we do have Jim Cornette, Bill Anderson, Princess Victoria, Ty Haggard, who is his great nephew. And what I really did appreciate about this episode that is different from other episodes that we've seen so far throughout the whole series is they had the book, a book where he wrote about his life. The book is not published. However, his nephew still has this book and he wants to get it published. And they're using his words from this book to talk about certain events that happened in his life. Some people that were being interviewed for the show also witnessed these things too. So we got their accounts of those stories as well. And we got to hear like a narration of his exact words from the book that he was writing. And I found that to be pretty cool. And I do hope that someday that this book does become published. It seems to be very interesting for what we've heard on the show so far. Now, we start off with Jim Cornette talking about one time where Chris had a cage match. He comes into the cage, and prior to getting into that cage, he had taken LSD. He gets in there, he's getting into the match, and then all of a sudden he imagines these spiders climbing up the cage, getting into the cage, and he is so afraid and he starts freaking out in the middle of the match where he ends up climbing to get out of the cage so he can avoid these spiders. But then he gets out of the cage and these spiders are still in the crowd. So now he's throwing punches left and right at these spiders. In real life, these spiders are the people in the crowd. So now he's actually beating up people that is in the crowd. He's still hallucinating and don't realize that he's actually hurting people in the crowd. Now the crowd, they're obviously upset about this and they're fighting back and they're hitting him with beer bottles, they're throwing trash at him. It becomes an all-out brawl in this little arena. The police comes and he's fighting them too, and they end up getting him out there. Now, meanwhile, Bill Anderson had just recently learned that he was going to be tag partners with Chris. Bill had just turned 18. He wanted to get into the wrestling business. And this was like his first-hand experience of witnessing who his tag team partner was going to be. And he was like, holy fuck, what am I getting myself into? So they also talk about when Chris went to San Francisco, he met a woman on the street drinking, and she asked him to sit with her. And he ended up walking away. A few steps away, he actually saw this woman on a poster and realized it was the singer Janis Joplin. They became friends, and he kind of took some of her carefree style and put that in the ring as a wrestler for his character. Now, not only was he friends with her, but he became obsessed with her too, to the point that he also wanted to join the 27 Club and die at the age of 27, just as Janis Joplin did. And he would tell his friends this all the time, that it was a goal of his to die by 27. Now, he did have a pretty rough childhood, and his niece described their childhood as throughout the weekdays, they had a normal childhood, but on the weekends, things got really bad with the family always drinking alcohol. That included their grandparents and parents as well. Now, one story is when Chris was 10 years old, he came home from a friend's house and he found the house just absolutely destroyed, and then found his mother on the couch. She was so bloody, he thought that she was dead. It turned out his grandfather had took a gun and took the wooden handle and beat her in the face so many times that it even split the wood on the handle of the gun. And when he realized that the grandfather was still around, he ended up having his sister get the car ready while he took his mom to the car. Now the grandfather approaches the car and he says, "I wish you was dead, you fucking bastard." Pretty much that's what he said. And he was so upset that his grandson would talk to him like that he punched him right by the ear, causing to rupture his eardrum. And then he went back in the house, got the gun, and started shooting at the car as his sister drove the car away, and they stayed away from the grandfather. Probably never seen him again. I'm not 100% sure about that. Now, he grew up and loving wrestling, went to high school. He wanted to be a wrestler. When the teacher asked one day for everyone to share what it is that they wanted to do with their lives, he said he wanted to be a professional wrestler, and the whole class laughed at him. Now, he joined the wrestling team at school, got kicked out of that, and then got kicked out of the school, obviously for not behaving. And from there, he decided that he was going to go out and make a name for himself. So this is around the time that he was 17 years old. He ended up going to Chicago, and he wanted to go to a wrestling school to learn how to wrestle. But really, he could not afford it. He had no job. He had no money. So he's trying to figure out what can he do to be able to afford for him to go to school and train. Now, while he's homeless on the street, he ends up meeting this underage boy who is a prostitute, and he becomes influenced by this young man young boy to do the same too. So he became a prostitute so that he can make money to be able to fund his training and anything else that he needed just to get by. He could not afford to not have his dream come true, so that when he went back to his hometown, so people wouldn't laugh at him about not being able to achieve his dreams. So Chris Colt got his name from Colt magazine, which was a gay magazine. He did say that he preferred men over women. He liked men more than women, but it wasn't that he'd never been with women. It was just that his preference was men. Now, he was openly gay, and other wrestlers were gay too, but they were closeted, and he had no issues with being open about his sexuality. Now, obviously, where there's men and big egos, a lot of guys feel threatened about their sexuality for whatever reason when another gay man is in a room. So they had, many wrestlers had asked Princess Victoria to hang out with Chris and to engage in sexual activities with him to turn him straight. I find that absolutely appalling. If he likes men, I don't think even one encounter with a woman is going to change his mind, because the rest of you losers are feeling like your manhood is threatened because another gay man is near you, which is absolutely insane. Now, Chris does go from territory to territory, having issues backstage with other wrestlers. Do I believe that he played a part in that? Absolutely. This guy was on drugs, he was drinking and all that stuff. However, I do believe that him being openly gay was another factor why he was going from territory to territory, because, like I said, men felt some type of way about being around other gay men, which is something that people still feel to this day, which doesn't make sense to me. It is what it is. Now, he ends up spending most of his career in the Arizona territory, where he is in a tag team called California Hells Angels with Ron Dupree. Not only were they tag team, they ended up becoming lovers, and they had a relationship for 6 years before he ended up passing away. Now, they ended up having, I guess you could say, a successful run as a tag team, and they were a heel tag team, and people just didn't really necessarily get their character. I guess it was a little bit before their time. Now, he was all about being a big heel and getting a reaction from the crowd. So he would do things and dress in certain types of way to really add to the shock value, until one day he took it too far and ended up burning an American flag on TV. Not only was he not allowed to be on TV, but the territory got their show taken off of TV because of that too. And also, he's banned from being on TV in the UK. I don't even know what happened with that. They didn't even bother to explain. Now, Chris and Ron, they do continue to have a relationship in terms of being in the ring as a tag team, up until the point that Ron ends up having health issues where he cannot get into the ring. So now he's in a trio with Mike Boyette and back with Bill Anderson. Now, he is still being problematic and he's causing issues. And one day while Bill is driving, Mike is in the front seat, and here he goes in the back seat, and he is punching the hell out of them. They end up stopping the car. He gets out of the car and he's still hitting them. And Mike is absolutely upset. and he ends up beating him up, put him in a sleeper, and leaving his body on the side of the road. Now he gets back in the car and he tells Bill to back up the car. Now Bill backs up the car and then he says, run his bitch ass over. And Bill was like, whoa, what? And before he can really even think about what Mike told him to do, Mike took his foot and put it on the gas, and the car is moving towards Chris's body that's laid out onto the ground. Now Bill ends up pushing Mike so that he can stop the car. He stops the car before the car can hit Chris. And then he was just like, you know what? Let's just leave him here and just go home. Now, they make it home by the next day. Bill opens the door, and who is sitting there on the motherfucking table? It is Chris. Chris somehow made it before he did. And he said, look, I don't know what happened. I don't care to know. But Mike, we got to get rid of him. So I don't know if he meant by kill him, but maybe as a trios, I'm not 100% sure. He doesn't say what it was. Bill was really upset about the whole situation because Mike would try to kill him while he's the one who's in the driver's seat. So if anything would have happened and the police would have came, they would have said that it was Bill who killed him and not Mike. So he was really upset about him putting himself into a type of situation like that. Now, they get on the plane to wherever other city they was going to. And the second they landed, Chris goes straight to a bar and he's just drinking his sorrows away. And it was at that moment where Bill was just like, you know what? I can't take it anymore. There's just too many problems going on in my life because of my association with you. And he ends up leaving that group. Now, soon after, Colt's partner, Ron, ends up passing away. He ended up having a heart attack while ring announcing. He was absolutely devastated by losing his partner of 6 years. They know each other for about 10 years, but they were together romantically for 6 years. He was devastated. He started drinking more, taking more drugs, and even a wider variety of drugs to help cope with the loss. Now, he does make his way back to the ring, and he's known as the Chris Colt Experience, and he comes out to Alice Cooper's Welcome to My Nightmare. He was one of those wrestlers that made coming out to a theme song popular. Now, every time he got back into the ring, he was in shape or not in shape, or he was even bizarre or just slightly normal. Like every time he would come out there, it was something different and nothing really consistent where the bookers or even the people in the crowd were going to know what version of Chris Colt they were going to get. Now, he became even more deeper into using drugs, and he became to come up with this new character, a German Nazi. By this time, it's 1987, and nobody's feeling that shit anymore. Now, had this been like 30, 40 years ago, no one was really going to care. If this was a heel character that was a Nazi, he was going to always get his ass whooped by the American hero babyface. So that type of stuff would have fly if it was 30, 40 years earlier, but not in the late 80s. People just wasn't getting into not any of the characters that he was doing, but especially this Nazi character just was not getting over. Now, he ends up continuing to do coke, and he does meth and speed as well. It's getting worse. And the promoters didn't want to have anything to do with him. And it got to the point where he was just not getting any bookings anymore. So this time, now he is on the streets and he's struggling to make ends meet. And he becomes obsessed with going to these drug houses and pretending to be cops and busting them. And for whatever reason, he thought that type of stuff was cool. Doing that obviously would put his life in danger because you never know who you're dealing with and who you're going to go to that house pretending to be a cop and end up losing your life. And now, according to him, he had no problem losing his life. He already wanted to pass away by 27 years old, and he made it past that. Now, nothing's working out for him, so he decides to get into doing adult movies. One of his movies was called Uncut Pro Wrestler. I don't even know why I had to tell y'all that. Anybody's interested, I guess you can find it somewhere on the internet. He started out doing like solo videos where he's just doing things by himself. And then he started using other people to come into these videos to do whatever adult content that they wanted. They even had the guy who was filming these content for him on the show as well. And the way that he spoke about Chris was just like very professional, almost as if they weren't even talking about adult movies. It's almost as if he was talking about Chris and him, coming up with projects that was Oscar worthy or something. Like the way he describes it, I don't know if any of you guys saw it, but you wouldn't even think he's talking about adult movies. Now, according to the director, they did these movies. He made whatever money he made from it. And the producers asked him, since he was having gay sex in these videos, did he have HIV? The director said that he didn't know. He think it's possible because a lot of other people did. And unfortunately, he ends up passing away when he's 49 years old. And they found him in an alley somewhere in Seattle, and it looked like he had been dead for days. They didn't even bother to do an autopsy, but they did find that he had HIV when he had passed away. This was a very interesting episode. I would definitely love to read that book that he wrote, because it seems like there's going to be a hell of a lot of crazy shit that they probably couldn't talk about on the episode. I did like to see what they showed about his personal life, all that crazy shit, but I would have loved to learn a little bit more about him in terms of pro wrestling. So I feel like after watching that, I'm curious to do my own research and look at his life in terms of what he did in the ring. But this was a really great episode, very interesting. And next week we have another Chris. Chris Adams was somebody I've been hoping since since season 2. I was like, where's Chris Adams episode? So here we are, season 5. Next week for episode 7, we're finally getting a Chris Adams episode. This one, I know it's going to be insane. So anybody who doesn't know about Chris, y'all want to do y'all little research before y'all end up watching this next episode, go ahead. It's going to be very interesting. I can't wait to see how this turns out. But guys, thanks so much for watching my review. I will be back with my regular scheduled stuff, AEW, Ring of Honor, all that good stuff. See you then.